Trash belongs with trash. That was the only warning I got before Sabrina emptied a $500 bottle of vintage Shiraz directly onto my white silk dress. It wasn't an accident. It was a statement. My father, Conrad, didn't gasp. He laughed. He actually reached into his pocket, pulled out a linen handkerchief, and handed it to Sabrina so she could wipe the splashback off her own fingers. "Careful, princess," he said. "That stuff is sticky." He didn't even glance at me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I checked my watch. 2:14 in the afternoon. I signaled the valet. My husband, Liam, was 60 seconds away, and 60 seconds was all the time they had left. Before I tell you what my husband did when he kicked open those ballroom doors, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read every single one, and it reminds me that justice feels the same in every language. My name is Serena, and for 27 years, I have been the invisible infrastructure of this family. I am the one who remembers the birthdays, the one who pays the overdue utility bills, and the one who stays quiet. To my father, Conrad, I am a failed lab technician who plays with dirt for a living. He doesn't know that in the agricultural technology sector, I am the chief science officer of the company that just bought his mortgage. But this isn't about my job. It's about what he took from it. 3 months ago, I made a mistake. I left my portfolio on the kitchen table during a Sunday visit. Inside was a document stamped private patent pending, a proprietary formula for drought-resistant soil hydration. I fell asleep on the couch. When I woke up, the portfolio was moved 2 inches to the left. I didn't say anything then. I just waited. 2 weeks later, Preston, the man standing at the altar today, announced he had secured a massive investment for his firm, based on a revolutionary agricultural breakthrough he had personally developed. Conrad had photographed my work while I slept and sold the concept to his future son-in-law. They used the projected profits from my invention to secure the loans for this $350,000 wedding. They thought they had pulled off the perfect heist. They thought I was too stupid to notice and too weak to fight. They were wrong. 1 month ago, the cracks started to show. Conrad called me at 6 in the morning. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't say hello. "The venue is threatening to cancel," he barked. "We're short $50,000 for the catering and the floral deposit. You need to fix this." "I don't have $50,000, Dad," I said, testing him. "Don't lie to me. I know you have savings. This is your sister's big day. If this wedding gets canceled, the investors get spooked. The deal falls through. Do you want to be responsible for ruining this family?" There it was. The leverage. If the wedding was canceled, Preston wouldn't sign the final investment contracts with the agricultural conglomerate. If he didn't sign the contracts, he hadn't officially committed fraud. He would just be a liar, not a felon. For the trap to work, the wedding had to happen. The ink needed to dry. "Fine," I said. "I'll wire it to the venue directly. Anonymous donor." "Good," Conrad said. "At least you're finally making yourself useful." He hung up. I sat at my desk and authorized the transfer. $50,000. It was a lot of money to burn, but I wasn't looking at it as a loss. I was looking at it as an investment in justice. I wasn't saving a celebration. I was financing a crime scene by funding the event where the illegal contract would be signed. I was ensuring that Conrad and Preston weren't just unethical. They were engaging in federal investment fraud. I needed them to feel safe. I needed them to feel victorious. I needed them to stand in that ballroom, arrogant and untouchable, so that when the floor dropped out from under them, there would be nothing to grab onto. I looked at the transaction confirmation on my screen. Payment sent. The trap was set. All I had to do was show up and watch them walk into it. The Vanderbilt Rose estate smelled like old money and fresh lavender. It was the kind of place where the grass was manicured with scissors and the air felt expensive to breathe. I walked toward the main entrance, smoothing the skirt of my cream dress. It wasn't a designer gown, but it was clean, professional, and respectful. My mother, Cynthia, intercepted me before my heel could touch the marble steps. She moved with the speed of a heat-seeking missile wrapped in chiffon. "Stop right there," she hissed, grabbing my elbow. Her smile was plastered on for the benefit of the other guests, but her eyes were venomous. "Where do you think you're going?" "To my sister's wedding," I said. "I paid for the venue, remember?" "Lower your voice. You might have paid for the walls, Serena, but you don't belong inside them. Look at you. That dress looks like you bought it off a rack at a discount outlet. We have senators in there. We have investors. You look cheap. I am your daughter." "You are a liability," she corrected. "Your father was very clear. We are not risking this merger because you don't know how to present yourself." She snapped her fingers. 2 security guards, thick-necked and impassive, stepped out from behind a pillar. They had been waiting. "Mr. Conrad gave specific instructions," the lead guard said. Please come with us, ma'am. Quietly. They didn't lead me to a table in the back. They didn't lead me to the kitchen. They marched me around the side of the building, past the manicured gardens, past the service entrance, to a roped-off area designated as a construction zone. There was a blue plastic tarp set up on 4 metal poles. Underneath it, the ground was a slurry of wet earth and gravel. There were no chairs. Just a few wooden crates stacked against a brick wall. And right next to it, the industrial dumpsters for the catering company were already overflowing with shrimp shells and discarded flowers. This is the overflow tent, the guard said, avoiding my eyes. You are to stay here until the reception concludes. A server will bring you a plate after the main course is served. He walked away. I sat on a crate. The mud immediately seeped through the thin soles of my shoes. The smell of garbage was faint, but undeniable. But the worst part wasn't the smell. It was the view. Directly in front of me was a floor-to-ceiling glass wall looking into the ballroom. I was an animal in a zoo exhibit, separated by a pane of glass that kept the dirt out of their gilded cage. I watched them. I saw Sabrina laughing, her head thrown back, holding court. I saw Conrad clinking glasses with men in suits. And then I saw him. Preston. He was standing in the center of the room, talking to an older man with silver hair and a posture that screamed authority. I recognized him instantly from the trade magazines. That was the CEO of Agro Global. Preston was gesturing wildly, his face flushed with triumph. He was tapping a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. I knew exactly what was in that portfolio. It was my research. He was selling my brain to save his skin, bragging about technology he couldn't even spell, let alone invent. He gazed out the window. His eyes met mine for a split second. He didn't look away. He smiled. A smug, victorious little smirk that said, I won. I looked down at the mud staining my hem. Enjoy it, Preston, I thought. Enjoy the view. Because the fall is going to be spectacular. The glass door slid open, slicing through the muffled hum of the party. The sound of string quartets and laughter spilled out into the humid, garbage-scented air of the construction zone. Sabrina stepped onto the muddy gravel. She held a glass of dark red wine in one hand, her other hand resting on her hip. She looked like a pageant queen, inspecting a stain on a carpet. You're still here, she said. It wasn't a question. Mom said you'd leave if we humiliated you enough. Clearly, we underestimated your lack of shame. I'm waiting for my husband, I said, not standing up. Your husband? You mean the guy who fixes tractors? God, Serena, look at you. Sitting in the dirt, wearing a dress that costs less than my napkins. You're blocking the service path. You're ruining the view. That was when she did it. The tilt of the wrist, the splash of vintage Shiraz. The dark red stain blooming across my chest like a fresh wound. Trash belongs with trash, she sneered. And then, Conrad stepped out. My father. The man who had once carried me on his shoulders. He stood next to Sabrina, looking down at me. I waited for the instinctual fatherly reaction. The shock. The scolding. The offer of a coat. Instead, he laughed. He handed Sabrina that linen handkerchief. Careful, princess. That stuff is sticky. He looked at me, shivering in the mud, covered in alcohol and humiliation, and he smiled. It wasn't a cruel smile, exactly. It was a relieved one. In that moment, the last piece of the puzzle clicked into place. I finally understood why he hated me. It wasn't because I was unlovable. It was because I was a bad investment. Conrad is a gambler. He has spent his entire life betting on appearances. He bet on the big house he couldn't afford. He bet on the country club membership he didn't use. And 20 years ago, he placed his biggest bet on Sabrina. She was the golden child. The one who would marry rich and validate his existence. I was the diversified risk he ignored. But deep down, Conrad knows he's a failure. He knows his business is crumbling. He knows he's a fraud. And when he looks at me, self-made, resilient, intelligent, he doesn't see a daughter. He sees evidence of his own incompetence. If I am successful without his help, then he is unnecessary. If I am valuable, then his decision to neglect me was a mistake. And a narcissist would rather burn his own house down than admit he made a mistake. He needs me to be dirt. He needs me to be a failure. Because if I am trash, then his treatment of me is justified. If I am trash, then he was right to bet everything on Sabrina. His cruelty isn't personal. It's a defense mechanism. He is protecting his ego from the bankruptcy of his own soul. You should go, Serena, Conrad said, turning his back on me. Before the real guests see you. I watched his back as he walked into the warmth of the ballroom. He thought he was walking away from a nuisance. He didn't realize he was walking away from the only person who could have saved him. He had doubled down on the wrong hand. And the dealer was about to call the bluff. I looked past them, toward the driveway. The black SUV was turning the corner. The headlights cut through the gloom like lasers. Liam was here. The black SUV screeched to a halt on the gravel, inches from the mud puddle. The door flew open. Liam stepped out. For 3 years, my family has only seen my husband in flannel shirts and oil-stained denim. They call him the farmhand. They joke that he smells like manure. Today, Liam wasn't wearing flannel. He was wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit, cut from Italian wool, tailored so sharply it could cut glass. He didn't look like a farmhand. He looked like a man who owned the ground everyone else was standing on. He walked straight into the mud. He didn't care about his shoes. He reached me in 3 strides, his eyes locking onto the dark red stains spreading across my chest. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask who did it. He looked at the glass wall, at the laughing faces inside, and his expression went dead cold. It wasn't anger. It was a complete absence of mercy. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice low. "No," I said. "Just stained." "Good." He took my hand. "Let's go inside." We walked up the service ramp, past the dumpsters, toward the main double doors of the ballroom. The lead security guard, the same one Conrad had ordered to keep me out, stepped into our path, his hand raising to stop us. "Sir, this area is restricted." The guard stopped mid-sentence. He looked at Liam's face. Then he looked at the lapel pin on Liam's jacket. A small silver crest that matched the logo on the guard's own uniform. The Vanderbilt Rose Estate wasn't just a venue. It was a subsidiary of a hospitality group. A group Liam had acquired 6 months ago. The guard's face went pale. He dropped his hand and stepped aside, pulling the door open. "Mr. Vance. I didn't know you were on site." Liam didn't acknowledge him. He walked straight up to the inner ballroom doors. He didn't knock. He didn't push. He kicked them open. Boom. The heavy oak doors slammed against the walls with a sound like a thunderclap. The string quartet stopped playing instantly. 300 heads turned. The laughter died in their throats. We stood in the doorway, me, dripping wine and mud. Liam, radiating lethal authority. Preston was the first to recover. He marched toward us, his face twisting into a sneer. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, gesturing at Liam. "Security. Why is the help inside the ballroom? Get this farmhand out of here before he tracks dirt on the floor, Preston." "Stop." A voice boomed from the head table. It was the CEO of Agro Global. The man Preston had been trying to impress all night. He was standing up, his napkin clutched in his hand, looking at Liam with an expression of pure terror. "Mr. Sterling," Liam said, his voice calm, carrying across the silent room. "I see you've met my former employee." Preston laughed nervously. "Former? Who do you think you are?" "I'm the VP of Acquisitions." "Not anymore," Liam said. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. "I bought the controlling interest in Agro Global at 9 in the morning today. The board has already ratified the transfer." Liam pulled a folded document from his inside pocket and tossed it onto the cake table. It slid across the linen and stopped right in front of Preston. "You're fired, Preston. Effective immediately. For embezzlement and gross incompetence." Preston froze, looking to the CEO for rescue. The CEO bowed his head to Liam instead. "We were waiting for you to finalize the restructuring, Mr. Vance." Silence swept the room. My father, Conrad, finally realized the worker he'd mocked for years was the real power. Liam stepped forward. "You wanted a merger. Now you're in business with me." Cornered, Preston tried to salvage the moment. "Fire me if you want. I still own the intellectual property. The patent is mine." Conrad backed him up, boasting he'd sold my research to Preston. I stepped in. "No, you don't." Preston had stolen the wrong prototype. The one he held turned farmland infertile in 3 years. I had left it there, knowing exactly what he'd do. "That contract you signed?" I said. "It's fraud. And that money crossing state lines makes it wire fraud." The CEO ordered the federal agents before Preston collapsed. People ask why I didn't stop them sooner. Because mercy would have taught them caution. I needed the crime to be complete. Then Liam turned to my father. The loan Conrad signed included a confession of judgment, giving Liam the right to seize everything. His accounts were frozen. His house was gone. When Liam set the keys on the wedding cake, the room broke. My father was no longer the tyrant, just a man with nothing left. We tried to leave, but Conrad snapped. He threw himself at the doors, screaming that I owed him everything. When he swung at me, Liam caught his wrist and held him until security dragged him away. He went to jail and never got bail. Everything unraveled quickly. Preston was ruined and sued into bankruptcy. My mother and Sabrina lost their home and their lifestyle. Liam and I went back to farming, building something real. One day, I deleted their numbers from my phone and felt lighter than I ever had. Sometimes you must let the bridge burn to escape the fire. And if that makes me the villain in their story, so be it.